Ron Graham Mindset Monday special edition, the Memorial Day edition of Mindset Monday. I want to do a short book review, one of the books that truly motivated me to set the record in motion uh, behind the Net Worth Nation platform and model that I pretty much established a few years ago now. And there were a couple of key factors in this book, The Millionaire Next Door, that really jumped off the pages. And to be honest with you, it set everything in motion uh, to even uh, motivate me to literally go into the field that I went into. Net Worth Nation is primarily an insurance firm. Again, once I said before, we insure that retirees stay retired. We ensure that investors invest. We assure that the middle class people are able to live a certain lifetime a style that's conducive to the hard work that they've done over the decades. And so this book in particular, I wanted to share on Mindset Monday a couple of key things that should help you understand even more so what my goals ultimately are, my end goals are with all of you out there. So listen up.
Category, or that above average category for their expected net worth, the authors found that there were 7 common factors between the millionaires that they interviewed. The first was that they do live well below their means, so not buying the most expensive houses and cars and clothes that they can afford. What a millionaire actually looks like. They go on to describe the general profile of the different millionaires that they interviewed, and it went something like this. Usually the wealthy individual is a businessman who has lived in the same town for all of his adult life. This person owns a small factory, a chain of stores, or a service company. He has married once and remains married. He lives next door to people with a fraction of his wealth. He is a compulsive saver and investor, and he has made his money on his own. 80% of America's millionaires are first generation rich. This description is very different from the idea of millionaires that is portrayed in media and in movies. So in real life, what they are saying is that millionaires most likely are not going to own some extravagant mansion. You probably aren't going to see them standing in front of their Lamborghinis or wearing super fancy clothes. The majority of millionaires in America still live well below their means, even though they probably could afford a little bit fancier lifestyle. It's those practices that got them to where they are that they continue to use to maintain their wealth. A good real life example of this is Warren Buffett living in the same house that he's been in for decades. He doesn't have a humongous mansion. It's a pretty standard size house by American standards, and he chooses to stay in that house even though he could probably afford to buy any house in America that he wanted. So for the millionaires that actually do own mansions, so the authors give a formula to calculate what your net worth should be by your age, and by
So what I took from this is the exact thing that most of us, myself included, did not understand. Now, coming up in the way, in the locale where I grew up at, the New York City area, New York, obviously. And one of the things, that was very popular in my day were your number runners, the guys out there on the block, doing what. And unfortunately, their lifestyle, the lifestyle of the famous athletes, and the way they dressed, and the cars that they drove. So all of those things were the signs of what I thought money really was. And so I didn't really understand about the other avenues of wealth the way we have perceived it. So the 7 common denominators that each and every one of them have. And this is what she's going over right now, those common denominators.
And they took those jobs, created their own businesses out of them so that they were in control of the business and in control of their own income. They also talked about how long these millionaires that they interviewed held their investments on average, and most of them were long-term investors. They found that 20% hold for a year or two, 25% hold for 2 to 4 years, 13% held their investments for 4 to 6 years, and 32% held their their investments for more than 6 years on average. Number 3 was that these millionaires believed that financial independence was more important than showing off a high social status. Again, this is tying back into that first point of not buying fancy houses and cars, and there's a whole chapter in here called You Aren't What You Drive, and it breaks down different car models, what these different millionaires actually do drive, and the impact of owning a car. Number 4 was that their parents did not provide economic outpatient care, which basically just means that these millionaires were not expecting to ever receive money from their parents or from other family members. They knew that they had to support themselves, and they never expected that for them or their children either. This reinforces that point that they made that most Americans.
Now that's a new one for me. I mean, we've heard this for many of you out there in the audience that have children. We've heard that, we have to help them, we have to set them up, we have to make them established. And I'm not saying that I don't hear that in here, but what I'm hearing is that they want to make sure that those kids, those young people understand what it takes. How many people have seen young people squander hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of their parents' hard-earned inheritance because they don't have the right mindsets? You see what I'm saying? So it's not so much as to leave these kids a wealth, because obviously a lot of you in my audience, you know that I have worked with you to get you products that are generational wealth. So, I can let that cat out of the bag. I've helped you guys set up generational wealth. But what I am saying is that that's not enough. You can't just leave the wealth to them without the knowledge and working on their responsibility levels. And this is what I'm hearing with this young lady. I think that's very, very powerful and very, very important. They must have the responsibility levels so that they won't squander.
Millionaires are self-made, and they actually did not receive any inheritance from their parents or from family members. Number 5 was that their adult children are economically self-sufficient, meaning that they not only did not receive money from their parents, but they do not give their money freely to their children either to support their lifestyles or their grandchildren's lifestyles. Number 6 was that they are proficient in targeting market opportunities. So this may be the stock market, sure, but really what this is referring more to is business opportunities. So going back to the point that most millionaires are self-employed, most of their businesses are solving a basic problem that people have, or they're targeting a specific niche and filling a gap in that market, providing a service that people really do need.
Okay, I know where this is going. Ron G, a lot of us, we work for the man, we work 40-hour work weeks, work some of us 12-hour work weeks. I get it. But this goes back to what I shared maybe a couple of years ago. And one of the things I said in a net worth mindset is that we understand that in order to get ahead, right? We know, and I again, this is not meant to shade anybody in the employment sector, because I do believe that there is a place for working for someone. There is an absolute place for that. But what I am saying is that working for someone and depriving yourself of some of the business ideas and goals that you guys have, the golden nuggets that a lot of you out there have, I think is a crime within itself. In other words, if the worst case scenario, you have a practice on the side, a tax practice on the side, or some of these other things that you guys are very, very adept at doing on the side, then so be it, do that. Do that, whether it's landscaping or pest control, whatever. Notice how they said it's not about the job. It's about putting yourself in a different category to benefit from being in control of your financial destination. In other words, we all have been there before in the corporate world, where all you're going to get is XYZ dollars an hour. It is what it is. That's it. And God forbid, there's any cuts or anything like that, and you let go, or overtime that you're learning to live with. And then, of course, the tax bracket of the overtime. And then, of course, last but not least, when they pull the plug on the overtime altogether. So we already understand that when we work for someone, we have a lot of limited leeway to level our financial opportunities upward. So that's a very good point.
Going off of that, number 7 was that they chose the right occupation. And by the author's opinions, the right occupation would be being self-employed. They said that, interestingly, self-employed people make up less than 20% of the workers in America, but account for 2/3 of the millionaires.
Now, how do you explain this? Interestingly, self-employed people make up less than 20%. However, but they account for over 2/3 of the millionaires. So again, the road less traveled is the one that you want to be on, right? And I know it sounds frightening because you say the road less traveled. Yeah, that's the one where all the goodies are, where the fruits, the vegetables, everything is there. Because again, not everyone has the courage, right, to go out through the door. I was talking to a good buddy of mine, Robert Johnson, and he shared with me the firing squad or the open door. And I said, what the heck is this? Where are you going with this, Rob? You know, firing squad or the open door. And in the process of talking about the firing squad or the open door, he was basically sharing with me a story about these prisoners that were captured, and they were given an option. In the morning, you go to the firing squad, or you can go out the open door. The question that the gentleman asked, well, what's out that door? And the captain of the guard said, unfortunately, I can't tell you that. I don't know. You'll have to figure that out. And of course, the next morning comes around and you hear bop, bop, bop. And the bottom line is he took the firing squad. And the reason why he took it was because the unknown was so overwhelming to him that he couldn't afford to take that chance. Now, the one of the ladies that worked in the prison camp, she asked the captain, she said, do you really not know what's on the other side of that door? He said, well, I know what's on the other side of the door. The other side of the door is freedom. But I can't tell them that. They have to make that decision. You see? And so he realized that very few people went through that door. Those who did, of course, they never returned, smartly so. But the point is that when I look at this, interestingly enough, self-employed people make up less than 20% of the workers in America. I think about that scenario, the firing squad or the open door. But let's watch a little bit more.
Looking at those 7 factors was a cool way just to point out the commonalities between these different millionaires that they interviewed. But something else that they pointed out was that these millionaires were able to answer 4 basic questions about their finances, and that you should be able to answer these too, to improve your chances of actually becoming a millionaire one day. The first question was, does your household operate on an annual budget? What they said was that these millionaires became millionaires by budgeting and controlling expenses, and they maintain their affluent status the same way. They compare this to people that you see working out in the gym. The most fit ones are the ones that you don't think need to go work out, but they got that way because of the way that they were consistent with their workouts and with exercising. They say that this is exactly the same with millionaires. Although millionaires may seem like they are the ones that don't need to budget, they got there by controlling their expenses, keeping track of their budgets, and actively continue to work on their finances to maintain that level of wealth.
I like what she said, actively continuing. In other words, don't forget what got you where you are. I love that. Don't forget what got you where you are. A lot of you guys out in Net Worth Nation and the community, you guys are doing really good right now. And I don't want you to forget what you did to get where you are. How did you get rid of the debts? How did you take the income from the debts and now reinvest it back into yourselves, into your credit, into your businesses? So again, do not forget where you come from. I like that.
Wealth. Question 2 was, do you know how much your family spends each year on food, clothing, and shelter? These are some of the biggest expenses that we have, and I'll throw transportation in there as well because that can be a big one. But again, this just goes back to that basic idea of budgeting and keeping track of your expenses and lifestyle inflation. Number 3 was, do you have clearly defined daily, weekly, monthly, annual, and lifetime goals? And something that they emphasized with this was that these goals were specific, and they were specific enough to implement a plan of action to actually get them done. Something that they said was that having a set of stated goals does not necessarily mean that one is committed to achieving them. Most of us want to be wealthy, but most of us do not spend the time, energy, and money required to enhance our chances of realizing this goal. And
So that is very key and critical. Why do I say that? Because even myself in this channel, putting all this information together, I can tell you it's very difficult to get my own family to sit down and go over these things that you just saw. It's very difficult. I mean, I can get them started, we can get here and get there, but to see it from one end to the other is almost impossible, right? Everyone has wealth and all these things on their mind, how to get out of debt and all this stuff on their mind, but getting people to sit down at a table and go over this stuff is like ripping teeth literally out of their mouths. So it is a challenge beyond challenges. I just wanted to be transparent with that.
And question 4 was, do you spend a lot of time planning your financial future? So the authors said that when comparing those groups of people that had more money than their expected net worth versus the people that had less money than their expected net worth, all of the people who were over their expected net worth could agree on 3 points. I spend a lot of time planning my financial future. Usually I have sufficient time to handle my investments properly, and when it comes to the allocation of my time, I place the management of my own assets before my other activities.
So there you have it. This is why it's so difficult to get people to sit down. You see, they understand time and they know it's limited. And because they understand the limitations of time, they spend more of it doing the things that are going to level them up than level them down. And I'm not saying don't go out, don't have a nice time, don't buy yourself nice things. You have to treat yourself. Okay, you do work hard for after all. However, that should not be the dominant factor in our homes, right? In order for the net worth nation mindset to prevail, you can clearly see the things that you have to be willing to do and the resistance, right? And the disciplines that you have to begin to implement in your day to day lives. So I thought that this was a very, very powerful direction to go in. This is the Mindset Monday holiday edition. And so I wanted to take extra time, guys, to give you all of the ingredients that went into the Net Worth Nation mindset. And everything that I learned from reading this book, and I've read it 2, 3, 4 times, The Millionaire Next Door, really, really, really enhances and super sizes the steps needed to get there. Ranji, aka Your Console, the Net Worth Nation. Thanks for watching.